So welcome everyone to the Eden Professional Development Webinar, Emergency Planning Documents to Improve Community Resilience. We're happy to see many of you of our Eden delegates and could take the time today to share in this free webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out and posted to Connect and the Eden YouTube. The evaluation link will also be included in that email. Please keep in mind all Eden delegates are welcome to submit webinar proposals at all times, and we really encourage you to do this. We also encourage you to encourage your colleagues to do the same thing. Eden's Professional Development Committee is charged with the task of providing at least 8 or 9 webinars per year, and we greatly appreciate volunteers and our suggestions of topics and presenters for these national peer-reviewed presentations. All the participants are on mute during the presentation. However, you may use the chat box to ask questions or make statements during the webinar. There will be a few minutes at the end of the webinar for the presenter to answer some questions. The evaluation link will be posted in the chat box, and we hope you take a minute or two to complete the survey and provide feedback to the presenters and the committee. Thank you for joining us today. So now I'm going to take my moderator hat off, and I'm going to put my presenter hat on. So my name is Connie Burnham, and I'm a faculty member with the University of Missouri Extension. And I'm here today to present this webinar to you, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and that you'll gain some information out of it. My background is not only do I work for the university, but my prior experience has been working for the State Emergency Management Agency of Missouri. And then I went to public health in Missouri on a bioterrorism grant. And then eventually I ended up in Extension. And my role here is actually the emergency management coordinator for Extension.
And her dad is not comfortable watching it.
So anyway, I will start with a couple questions here. So first of all, why is it important that we plan for disaster resilience communities? Why is it important that communities become more disaster resilient? You know, one of the reasons is that it helps government. You know, we rely upon government to pretty much take care of everything in disasters. And that is an approach that doesn't work very well. But we do need government involved in it. It helps government make proactive investments and policy decisions. Without information, government is not going to be able to make those kinds of decisions that are appropriate for the situations. Government should also communicate risk and vulnerability to the public. This is very, very important. If the public doesn't understand what is going on or what they need to be concerned about, they just go on their regular lives. I mean, if I weren't in emergency management, I wouldn't think about a lot of these things. And that's the situation with most of the public, is that they're off doing something else. And if somebody thinks that it's important, they'll let them know. But it also helps build public and private sector capabilities and partnerships. Government does not have enough money to build all the capabilities that are needed during a disaster. Sometimes you have an event, just like in Florida when they had snow. They didn't have any snow plows, and so they had to borrow them from other states in the northern part of the United States that actually had those pieces of equipment. So, you know, you're always, you know, looking at what kind of capabilities do we have on not only the public side, but also on the private side, and building the partnerships that are necessary during that time as well. And then the last thing that I have on the list, but is really, really one of the most important things, is that if we plan, then we can resume normal operations and recover much more quickly after a disaster. Because if we do not plan, then every situation that comes up, we have to figure out how we're going to handle it. Well, if we had sat down before and we had talked through these sort of things and built those capabilities and built those partnerships and relationships, then when something happens, it may not always work out the exact way that it was planned, but at least you have a good running start. If you don't do that, then all you're just doing is miring yourself down in all of the minutia that goes along with trying to make these decisions about big decisions about disaster recovery. So how is that done? Well, it's done by developing emergency plans. And this can be not only on the government side, but it'll be on the private side as well. It's getting to know the resources and capabilities in your communities. And this is one of the big things that government does, is that they try to assess and try to figure out, what do we have and what kind of capability, what could we do if these sort of things happen? What will we have in order to address those issues? And getting to know those resources and capabilities is vital, because you can't really plan if you're not going to identify what those are. And then after you find out what you have, then you can improve those resources and capabilities, because these are the situations. We know that we have this, but we don't have that. And so therefore, we need to make sure that we have a good list of those things. And then those would be the things that would be put into emergency plans. Well, who does it for the public good? Well, government. And they do it on, the local, state, and federal levels. But who does it for those that are not government, for the rest of us? Well, it's our responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility to always take care of us. It's part of our responsibility to do that. And so through the years, we've gotten very lax about that. I mean, years and years ago, grandparents and great grandparents, they knew how to take care of themselves and what their responsibilities were. But excuse me, but then it got easier and easier for us. And so many times we haven't done a very good job of thinking about how we're going to take care of ourselves and help our communities become that way. So then, what are the resources that are available for non-governmental entities? Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. For this grant that I'm going to talk to you about just in a couple minutes, we developed a team, and there were like 6 from University of Missouri, which we call MU. There was 1 from Mississippi, and there were 2 from Illinois. And we searched through, I can't tell you how many websites that we went through to locate all the resources that we were able to gather together. And there's so many more that I could have probably put on here. But after a certain point, I just said, probably we have enough to start with. So the grant that I'm talking about is called the New Madrid Seismic Zone Multi-State Public Awareness and Education Project. Always long titles, aren't they? And so the first, and this was a USDA NIFA grant. And the first objective was to develop and implement a preparedness toolkit for those that live in the New Madrid seismic zone and across the nation. And let me explain the New Madrid seismic zone. It is named New Madrid because it was named after the earthquake that occurred in 1811 and 12 in New Madrid, Missouri, where the epicenter was. And that is a very small city and county in the Boot Hill of Missouri. Boot Hill, it sounds like Boot Hill, but it's Boot Heel is the actual name, because it looks like a boot heel if you look at the map, but the way it's pronounced is Boot Hill. So anyway, it's named after that, but it affects not only Missouri, but it affects 7 other states. So it's a huge, huge seismic zone. And so that's why the other partners, team members came on. That was, again, from Mississippi and from Illinois to help us with, because they may have had resources, and how they're planning for this might be different than we are in Missouri. So these are some of the the categories that we picked, but I didn't put a lot more on there, but I'm going to name a couple more. So so this team, we divided up, and each one of us took a certain amount of categories, and we looked for the resources that we thought would be appropriate for those areas. So for those categories. So we have like the citizen, businesses, schools, faith-based organizations, nonprofits. We have information in there about veterans, estate planning, childcare providers, FEMA-ready kids, reunification of children. And those are just the first, there's many, many more of those that are listed. A matter of fact, we have 16 pages of one category and then 7 pages that are directly related to the earthquake. So we'll go into those as we.
Connie, can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
You got a series of questions from Aaron Groth in the chat
Oh, okay.
about so he says, is this the Smith Lever Special Needs Competitive Grant Program, the USDA NIFA grant? He thinks,
Yeah.
he says, he thinks it is, so.
Yes, it is. Absolutely it is.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine. Absolutely. So this is it. So these lists are now on the Missouri Eden website. And if you'll go to this link and click on resources, go down a little bit further down the page, and it says resources, and it has 3 different boxes. The first one on the left is, are you prepared for a disaster? And that is a PDF handout, and there's a QR code on it, and you can click on it, and it'll get you to a family disaster plan. And then the other part of then on the other side of it, we'll have information about like the 7 steps to earthquake preparedness. So anyway, it's a handout that you can print out if you want to, and you can hand it out, or whatever, or put it on your webpage, or whatever you want to do. The next box has the earthquake preparedness resources, and the third one has the disaster planning resources. Now, the difference between these two are only because, excuse me, I needed to identify the resources that were specific to earthquake preparedness from those that are used for any other disaster. Doesn't make any difference what the hazard is. And I did that because, of course, because the grant was focused on earthquakes, and I didn't want to put all of the planning resources under earthquake, because if I did, if people are searching for resources, they may say, well, we don't have any earthquakes in our area, so I don't need that, and then would have missed all the planning resources that are there. So I took those and separated those out so it'd be easier for people to find this information, because if they can't find it, then it's a big waste of time on my part and everybody else's. So I want to make sure that you were able to find it. So again, on the earthquake preparedness resources, there's 7 pages that go with that resource. I mean, they're just one right after the other. And on the disaster planning resource, that is 16 pages. And so somebody can use all of them, or if they're not in an area that they're concerned about earthquakes, then maybe they only want to look under the disaster planning resources. So I found the earthquake resources under the CUSEC, which is Central United States Earthquake Consortium, under their page, and I pulled a couple of them out just because I think these are interesting. I particularly a couple of the top ones. So this one that is the preparedness guide for mobile homeowners. And then they have one that's a guide for blind and visually impaired persons. I thought, oh, those are awesome to have something like that is very specific And a lot of people in these areas that might be affected could live in mobile homes, or you certainly are going to have people that are blind or visually impaired. And so it was good to see that there was something specifically to address those issues. And then the third one on that list is that home hazard hunt poster. And this is a really nice diagram of a home that has all of the things inside of it that you might need to think about as you're working through those rooms and things. Oh, maybe I need to strap down my water heater, or maybe I need to make sure that my shelving units are attached to the wall, or just different things like that. So anyway, it's really it's good to see. This would be something you could share with kids and say, hey, look at this house here, and look what they're saying, that we should maybe do this. And so I don't know, I just think visuals are really, really important, and I think that this one is really a good visual to share. They also have some information about earthquake insurance and how important that is, because most people do not realize that if they live in those areas, it's like, if you don't have earthquake insurance and you have damage, it may not be covered under your regular homeowner's insurance. It's like flood insurance and probably other ones that are out there that are very specific. So anyway, they have information about that. And then one of the other ones that I pulled out just to highlight was the Ready Business Quake Smart program, which is in English and Spanish. And some of a lot of these other resources, earthquake or just in the general listing, they're in several different languages, English and Spanish, but there's some of those that are that are in, I don't know how many different languages, which is really, really important. And I think FEMA is the one who has put those out. So it's important to be able to share this information with people who English is their second language. So anyway, hopefully some of those things, you'll be able to share with others. The second part of that the first objective was to develop a public awareness and educational campaign regarding the toolkit and how that benefits local communities. So this is a concept that we should use in all of our programming, and probably do, because when you're developing a program, you're trying to solve some sort of a problem that you've identified, right? Because somebody needs some information about this or that, whatever it is. And so you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, so who needs that information and how will I get that information to them? And so you're already doing that. You're trying to figure out, how am I going to get this information out? You're doing a marketing campaign basically in your head, how am I going to do that? So anyway, so this is the concept that I think that we can, all use, and we do use, but particularly in this program, I decided that we needed to develop that list so that it could be used and people wouldn't say, oh yeah, okay, well, here it is, but now who can I contact? So we just sat down, our team, and just went through it and decided, these were the areas that we thought. So we came up with 36 marketing opportunities. You will have different ones that you can identify, but these are just some of them that we put together. All of our extension programs, farm safety days. If you're involved with your state emergency management agency, you can share these, because they're always looking at the government side of this. They're not looking at what the public can use. And so this would be helpful to them. Local emergency managers, if you're not involved with them, you need to be, because that's where you are more than likely to offer support, is in that area. And so share with them. United Way 211, the United Way 211 that we have, that is very actively involved in emergency disaster work. is out of St. Louis, and they tell me all the time that they use our website to get information when people call in and say, hey, I need this, or I have to have that, or whatever. And I've had calls from people after a disaster because of that. And United Way is the one who usually gives them that, my contact information. You can also, use agricultural leaders, of any or organizations that are out there, that you can share this information with. Local Farm Bureau agents, insurance agents, some insurance companies may have some of these kind of opportunities listed on their website, and that is great. But I would be willing to bet they don't have all of the things that are under this, under these listings. And I would share that with them because they may have a way of getting that information out. If I were an insurance company and I thought there was any way that somebody else was helping to improve people's ability to respond to a disaster, I'd be all over that, because I'd want to embrace that and say, oh my gosh, that's going to be great stuff. We can pass that on to our customers so that they can look through these sort of things and find some things that we wouldn't have even thought about. So that's why I think, trying to get this information to a lot of different organizations and businesses, I think, is pretty important. So how do you insert this toolkit in your programming? Well, I'm just giving you an example. So if I were doing a program and we had taken a break, after you come back, I'd say, okay, before we get back to what we were doing before you left for your break, we're going to do a public service announcement. So ask them some questions. Ask, how many have a family disaster plan? And even if it is, a couple, or it may be just one person, or maybe somebody is living with another roommate or a couple roommates, it doesn't make any difference. Don't let family get you, I don't know, separated from what we're trying to do here. The disaster plan is the most important. So if it's family, whatever family means to you, if it means, some other roommates that you have, that's great. If you're just living by yourself, I don't care. I just know that, these are the important things that you need to consider. And some of those templates might have more information in there that you would need. That's fine. You don't have to fill out every blank that there is available. You just need to put down the most important information. Ask them how many have a communication plan. The reason that is important is most of us, every day, walk out of our door and we are separated. Some go to school, some go to work, some go somewhere else. Who knows? So you're all separated, and say, okay, what happens if some kind of an event occurs? It could be a cyber. It could be a tornado. It could be a winter storm. It doesn't make any difference what it is, but how would you be able to get hold of each other if things became pretty dicey and you were not able to all arrive back home like you had originally planned? So that is what people need to consider, is that what would that take? What do I need to do? And discuss that as a family. I mean, and most of us don't do that. And we really should, because if we don't, especially if you have kids that are in high school and they're kind of on their own and they're going to school and they're going to work, and then all of a sudden, something happens. It's not like, you dropped them off at daycare and you're going to pick them up from daycare. You would know where they were, but sometimes it doesn't work quite that well. So another question I might ask is, do you have an emergency kit and a first aid kit? Now, I would consider that a first aid kit should be in your emergency kit, but an emergency kit is much more than a first aid kit. Emergency kit would be, water and maybe snacks and flashlights and blankets and whatever else you would think you needed in that emergency kit. And there's lots of lists out there that you can use to build your own emergency kit. But I think first aid kit is really important, because if there were a disaster and you were injured or someone was injured, you definitely would want to make sure that you had some sort of a first aid kit. So if your audience is business related, and I don't care if it's ag or non-ag, I don't care who it is. Business is a business is a business. Ask how many of them have a business plan. Now, I'm not talking about a business plan like you go into your financial institution and say, I need to borrow some money. This is about a continuity of business plan. How are we going to recover our business after a disaster? These are very, very important issues. They have a lot of information that you can put in there. You know, you would have all of your list of your customers. It would have, you know, contact information for businesses that you needed to, that you do work with and for. It would have a huge amount of information in there, and everybody should have one of those if they're in a business. And if I were at a financial institution and somebody walked in and said, well, I have a business plan, I'd say, okay, well, that's great. I do need to know how you're planning on paying back this money, but I really want to know how you're going to survive if you have a disaster. If you're affected by flooding or tornado or whatever, how are you going to bring your business back? And I think that is one of the things that maybe is not asked enough. So if your audience is older Americans, ask if they and their caretakers are prepared for a disaster, because, you know, there's a lot of different places that you could be, and you need to make sure that, you know, the caretakers are as prepared for a disaster as your parents or your grandparents are. Everybody needs to be prepared. So you can share all of these, you know, resources with any of them, and then you can make up your own. I mean, you can, you know, whatever programming that you're in, you can say, okay, you can slide it off that way and say, would you be prepared for this? And, you know, and whatever audience that you have. So anyway, I think it's just a good way of opening up a conversation about how are you going to get yourself better prepared. And the reason, you know, it's vitally important that we have better prepared communities, because I've seen it, and probably every one of you that's on this webinar have seen the same thing, is that without communities being better prepared for these disasters, we end up with a lot of communities that may never get rebuilt. And when that happens, people leave. And when that happens, then students don't go to school. And all of a sudden you have all kinds of issues. You have businesses that leave the community because they don't have anybody that's going to come in and buy any of their services, whatever that might be. It could be a grocery store, it could be a gas station, it could be a lot of different businesses that are there. And all of a sudden, those who are left then don't have those services. So working on this together, and you know, to me, Extension is a really good place. I mean, we are that group that can really help people think through some of these things, because we have so many different programs and we can insert this in a lot of different ways.
Connie, this is
Yes.
Sonia. We've got a question. Stephanie is asking, is there a good example of an emergency business plan for city extension offices?
For city extension offices,
Are you thinking about a continuity of operations plan for offices, Stephanie?
I'm going to be teaching our extension people about emergency preparedness in about a month from now. And we have some city offices that think that a plan is not even necessary. And so it would be nice to give them a basic idea of something to do with extension and what their job would be of pulling an office up so they can actually function again. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Are you talking about like a county, I mean, like an extension office plan?
Yep, because
Yeah.
our extension office is our own business, you know what I mean? And if we can't get up and functioning and working, we can't help anybody else. And so
Right.
they are at the very basic bottom of how do we do a business plan for our own selves as an extension office so we can help others.
That sounds like a continuity of operations plan, as opposed to, here's a fire drill, here's what we're doing with our, escape routes, right? You're wanting to make sure that they're still operational.
Yep.
Well, I still think though that having a county plan or, an extension office plan is
Mhm.
important because if you are, and that would be, trying to make sure that your office is up and running. Because if you do that, then you are, then you will be ready. And so we do have, I mean, Sony's got one from Nebraska that she probably can offer. We have one at, MU that we use. I don't know if anybody else is on the
I
line.
just lost her. Or was it me?
Pardon?
I just lost you. Say that again. You
I was
have,
gonna say, well, Missouri MU has one and Sony has one for Nebraska. That we could, that we can share. I
We
don't know if
have
there's any,
at A&M with our AgriLife extension, we have ask our extension officers to have a plan, and so we could, there's a template we have for that.
okay. Well, how do we want to go about that and get that out there so that people have a look at whatever they think they need and can use? Mine is not on the Eden website. Sony, is yours?
Mine is not either, and so we have two different ones. The emergency action plan is more suited to those immediate efforts to
Mhm.
save lives, people, and then continuity of operations plan is more like, how are you going to get back up and running? Where's your banking information?
Okay.
Where's your equipment? Those kind of things. But neither of those are online, and I don't know. Ruth, is there somewhere that we can put that on the Connect extension site if people have those?
Yeah, we could put that on Connect, or we could put that somewhere on the Eden site. We certainly could do that.
in the
And I would think
meantime,
on the
can-
Eden site would be a good place for it, probably. That way people would drive them that direction.
Right, right.
Well, there we go. Angie says resource database, but Stephanie, I'll go ahead and I will email you what I have.
I'd appreciate it because I have like 2 weeks left before I'm,
I wondered. Okay,
and we're in the situation where you say to these cities or these county offices, are you even prepared to know where your power turnoff is?
Right, right.
And they don't have a clue. So
Mhm.
we have some that say, oh, we're prepared. And you say, well, what are you going to do if you lose power and internet? And they go, well, don't know. And so that's how low we are at trying to do this. So if there's a template I can give them out, then it'll at least spark their mind that, you know what, we really aren't, and we need to do something about it. That's what my goal is. So if anyone can email me, since I only
Right.
have 2 weeks, that would be great.
I was gonna say, I'll email ours as well from MU and, you can look through them and you may want to make your own. You can say, I like this, but I don't like that. I want this, I want that, or something like that. And then Sony, if you want to do the same thing, but we do need to get those loaded onto the Eden website so that people have somewhere to go. And Monty, if you want to put yours on, and if anybody else does, I mean, everybody's got a good idea, I'm sure, some better than others, maybe have something in them. So anyway, good question though, Stephanie, because there's
And
a
I have I have one for a small city that usually don't have emergency operations plans, so if it's a good place to put it somewhere on Eden, I could do that. And sorry that I overtook your presentation.
Oh, good heavens, no, you didn't. I had plenty of time, so not a problem. Thank you for asking the question though, because I think it's important. Because others might be on there that either have something to offer or need something like you. This is the place to be. Okay, so the second thing, second part of that, second goal of that of the grant was to build a training program for extension professionals. So after we got done with all of the other resources and things, all of a sudden I went, oh my gosh, that's right. I still need to do that. So I was trying to think of where I might find disaster related easy courses to take. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to look at FEMA's independent study program. And this is their website. And all you have to do is just say FEMA's, IS program or something like that, and it'll pop up. But I went through, I think they have 189 courses. And I went through each one and just looked at who was the intended audience and, what was the subject. Some of them were they were directed towards their FEMA employees. And so some of those I stayed completely away from because we didn't know that we didn't need those. But I did find that there were 64 courses, and I, sent it out to several other people to see what they thought about it. And I think there was most, everybody that I sent it to said, it looked like a good list or whatever. And it's just basic information. It's not in depth of anything. And it, most of them don't take more than a couple hours probably, to do. But anyway, I think it is a good way of us, of our extension professionals, whatever title we put to that, faculty or anything else, that they are given that information and then they can look through it. Or maybe if, like Stephanie may say, you know what, this would be a really good one because we're working on this within our programs. And so therefore, go here and take this training because it'll help you understand what we're talking about in this particular situation. But in order to access the system or in order to take those courses, you have to have a FEMA student ID number. And this is how you get to that, to get yourself a number. And if you just go on to the independent study program page, it has this information right there about the student identification number. So, just use it and get yourself a number and then get in there and consider some of the courses that, you might think are important. Because I still look through them and go, oh yeah, I need to take that one. Oh, I need to take that one. I mean, I've taken a lot of these courses and things like that, but there's new things that they come up with and a lot of new courses that they've offered. Then again, let's look within our own programming. You might have something on food safety and say, oh, that's something that more of our, our faculty need to understand something because it's not their deal. That's not their program, but it is important when you talk about food safety as a result of a disaster. Tree replacement. We had 2 cities that were really impacted by tornadoes in May. And we didn't really have much to offer in terms of some other things, but we talked to them, talked to the emergency management directors for the counties, and they said what we noticed was all of these trees that had been, there were so many trees that were destroyed that, they were going to have to be replaced. And, and if that happened to me, I don't know anything about trees. That's not my deal, right? So anyway, I'd be looking for a resource to try to help me find what's an appropriate tree for my yard. And so therefore, we put that on our website. So if you go to our website, there's a section there that has some different resources there so that you can get some information about trees. And so that's what we did in regards to that, that particular situation. Or you may have, doesn't hurt to know something about the disaster assistance programs through USDA. Because again, you may not, even if you're an ag, that may not be something that you always are familiar with or know anything about. But it could be something that you could then talk to any of your farmers or producers or whatever and say, there are some assistance programs through USDA in case they don't know. You know, maybe we assume that everybody knows all that, but that's a bad assumption to make. So anyway, so these are some other programming opportunities, I think, and not only for and you don't even have to work in that particular program to be at least knowledgeable about that. Because if we're an extension and somebody says, well, that's not really what I do, but I know somebody who knows something. I know that guy, or whatever. That's what, we can help connect people. We're problem solvers. That's what we do. We help solve problems that either we recognize or somebody comes to us. And so these are important things that we have a general knowledge about some of these things instead of, well, I don't do that in my program. But at least if you know that there's something there, you can say, I'm not very familiar with that, but I know who to contact. I know who to send you to. And I think most of us probably do that every day, when we're trying to find resources for other people. So again, if you need the marketing strategy handout or the list of recommended emergency management training courses, you can contact me. In the next slide, we'll have my contact information so that I can send it to you, because again, it's not on a website yet. I wasn't exactly sure how to place that there, but the emergency management training course handout that I've been working, and I'm part of the exercise and training committee through Eden. And so we've been talking about how to place that on that, where to place that on the website. I'm also chair of the professional development committee. So again, I encourage all of you and anybody else to make sure that you will consider putting in a request to do a webinar, because we definitely need more of these and good quality ones that I know that are out there. And so I hope that we get more as we go through these next few months. Any more questions?
Connie, Ruth shared the evaluation in the chat.
Okay.
So that she said she will also email it out with the replay.
Okay, that'll be great. That'll be great. And then here's my contact information, and feel free anytime to contact me. I mean, this is my world. And so anytime that I'm not saying that I always have the answer, but I too can find others out there that do have answers about this sort of thing. So I'd be more than happy to help you whenever I can. So
Connie, Natalie asks, how do you suggest keeping these resources and plans and templates updated?
well, I was going to say they're linked to the whatever organization that they're coming from. So they're not something, most of them are not something that I've had anything to do with. So I would think that if they keep them current, they should be current on if you use this list, I would think that they would stay current. But and even if that link breaks, then I would just use the name of the whatever the group is or something like that to go into their website and see if there is another link that they can find or updated information. So hopefully, I mean, I get it, I understand, but you know, this is about the best that you can do. You can just hope that it stays as current as possible. And I will continue to, and that, I mean, it's a good point. And I will start going through this periodically and making sure that they continue to be current. And if the links are broken, I'll try to figure out how to find out if that resource is still available. But anyway, if nothing else, it's giving you, and I'm not saying that these are the only ones. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there. You may find things within your own programming, and it's so whatever you find, I just want you to make sure that it's reputable. You know, the only ones that I used are from either government organizations or things that, you know, places that have been vetted. I didn't put anything in there from a business. And the reason I didn't is because they've probably taken things from, you know, FEMA and some of the other, you know, websites as well. But I just want to make sure that they're vetted. So if it comes from a university, comes from, or comes from, you know, government entity, something like that. So you'll find that they're all, that's where they're coming from. So anyway, I'll try to keep track and make sure that I go back periodically and check them out. So anyway, but it's a good question. Good question.